Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. We are here at Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, not Alabama. You probably haven't heard that much about this lake because there haven't been that many big tournaments. Guys, this is a massive body of water, 100 and some thousand acres, way bigger than the Lake Eufaula in Alabama. And after my practice, I kind of think we're going to see weights that are every bit as good as the one in Alabama. Now, if you watch my channel regularly, you probably saw that I did a pre-practice report. I talked about how the water was going to be extremely dirty, some of the baits I was going to use based on that, and how that dirty water kind of dictated what I planned on doing going into practice. So what I can tell you now, after having completed 3 days of practice, it is dirty, but there is some clean water to be had too. So let's talk a little bit about practice. Day one of practice, I decided to head to an area that I just thought looked good on some of my research, where I do a lot of Google Earth review. I knew it was going to be an area that was going to be dirty, but I also thought there was some good history in this section of the lake. And I got to tell you, I pretty much struck out. I found one area where I got a handful of bites, probably 10 to 12 bites over the course of a couple hours, and they were really confined. Didn't feel super huge, but didn't feel terrible either. But that was the only area I found. I had a couple of other bites that were scattered around, mostly small bites, nothing that got me excited at all. The unfortunate part is, at the end of the day, roughly 6:30-ish on the first day of practice, I hit a stump. I had some issues where I broke my trolling motor, and I wasn't able to get my trolling motor fixed until late on day two of practice at about 7 o'clock on day two. Fortunately, my roommate and good buddy Chris Grove said, "Matt, jump in the boat." This is something a lot of competitors probably wouldn't have done, but he's a good buddy of mine, and it's something we knew would be valuable to both of us. We do share some information on the water as well, so from that standpoint, it was just going to help us both. And we had an inkling to go check out an area about as far away as you could go, basically up a river system, and it just being we're river rat kind of guys, we wanted to do it. So we went up there and we found some really nice looking water, some relatively clear water for what this body of water looks like right now. And we got some bites. We just didn't get a pile of big bites. I think the potential is there to catch a good bag. I think if you went up there, you'd catch a limit. I just don't know how big it's going to be. And we are supposed to have really strong winds, so I don't know how doable that run is even going to be on this lake. Day three of practice, I have my trolling motor back. I decided to stay close in this area where our cabin's at, one of the more clear water portions of the lake, and I got a lot of bites. It just seems like you got to go through a lot of fish to catch one that's a keeper, and that has me a little bit concerned from the standpoint of you got to do a lot of fishing to catch your weight. I think there's better potential in this region to catch a big bag. I just don't know how easy it's going to be when there's a whole pile of other boats that are going to be fishing this area. So practice really was not great in my opinion, just based on not finding a ton of areas that I felt like I'd be able to key in on. No specific pattern. It just seems like, if you're fishing rock, you're probably going to get some bites. If you're not fishing around the rock, you're probably not around that many fish. So even though that's a pattern, it's not a great pattern when everyone else is running that same thing. But there are a couple of things that are interesting to me. If I switch over to the deep dive app here, guys, I'll show you, if you recall, and I'll try to clip in the previous deep dive map where Lake Eufaula was almost entirely mud. Well, we've had a week of about as perfect weather you can get. It's been mid 70s, calm, no rain. And as you can see in the deep dive app now, the lake is really starting to clear up, like dramatically clearing up for only a few days difference. So what that's allowing me to do though is kind of key in on some of the areas that I know are starting to clear up. It's going to allow me to choose some baits that maybe I wouldn't normally choose. I don't necessarily have to go with the big, bright, hard thumping baits. I can get away with some baits that aren't going to be as aggressive. And I think that might help me get a few extra bites in the tournament. I also, if I have the opportunity to go exploring and do some fishing in the tournament after I've secured a limit, Some of the areas I'm going to concentrate on are those ones that are starting to clear up, because those are going to be areas that I think the fish are going to be moving up in. They're going to be a little bit more aggressive, and they're going to be a little bit easier to catch. So there's a couple of areas that really jump out at me. One of which, if you look, I believe it's the South Canadian River Arm is what it's called. It's the middle section, the far west end. There is all of a sudden a clear water area starting to develop. There's a couple of creeks on that north side. I don't think there's been many people at all that have been up there, just based on the watercolor, and that part of the lake is not notorious for being good. So that would be a good area for me to go potentially and concentrate towards the second half of day one if I've got a decent limit. That probably hasn't received much pressure. I also want to point out that the coves right across from our takeoff in the central part of the lake are clearing up quite a bit as well. So that's going to be a good area for me to potentially spend a little bit of time at the end of the tournament. If I'm looking to kill a half hour before I got to check in, those are going to be the areas I'm going to go to towards some of the other places that are still showing up as being pretty muddy. Because it really does seem like this week the clear water's being a much bigger player. There are going to be some people fishing some muddy water, but the clear water is getting a lot more pressure. So if you can stay ahead of where that clear water is getting or is becoming clearer, you're going to be ahead of a lot of the competition. So I really feel like this deep dive app is giving me a little bit of an advantage, because I can see what parts of the lake are clearing up, and I can assure you some of these areas are not places most of my competitors are going to guess would clear up first, but we're starting to see clear water pockets in some of the muddy areas. So there's a lot of value in that. And I'm hoping I can secure a good limit, in the first part of the day, which allows me to go exploring in the second half, which hopefully then allows me to find something I can use for day two. Because after practice right now, I don't feel real good about anything that I've got. I've got a lot of confidence I can turn that into something, but it's going to require me getting a couple of good bites and putting them in the boat. From a bait perspective, it's pretty simple this week. We're going, for the most part, power fishing. I'm going to have 3 or 4 different flipping presentations. My primary flipping presentation has actually been the 1/8 ounce core tackle hover rig with a Berkley MaxScent Creature Hog. And why that's working so well is because I am concentrating on that rock, and it's real jagged rock. But that internal weight of the hover rig in that Creature Hog is actually sliding over the rocks without getting caught up and hung in the cracks of the rocks, like I've been having problems with a Texas rig and a jig, because a lot of this fishing is taking place in only a couple feet of water, like 6 inches to 2 feet of water. So having that really light hover rig just kind of glides over the bottom. So that's been really good. And then when I get in some of the clearer water, I've been throwing some swim baits, I've been throwing some crankbaits, some spinner baits, various things. The fish seem like they're keying much more in on shad in the clear water areas versus the muddy water areas. So a lot more of the shad moving imitation baits has been working, but I'm trying to keep it simple. I do have probably a dozen rods rigged, but I'll probably end up throwing, I don't know, 5 or 6 most of the day. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to get out there. I feel like, we're moving with the fish and adjusting with the fish. We just got to find an area that you get to before all the other competitors get to, because the weather's been so stable. I think we are going to see a lot of fish moving up to the bank, and it's going to be about rotation. If you can get into a good rotation of spots, you could be off to a really good start. If you fall into a bad rotation where you're behind 5 other competitors, you're going to be fishing for scraps, and you could be in trouble at that point. So we'll see, guys. I'm excited to get out there, excited to try it. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow. We'll have additional post-tournament and daily tournament recap videos after the tournament's over. And hopefully we can have another good tournament. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all the support that you give, and stay tuned. Hopefully we have a good bag to show for it.